Hi, this is Mrs. Erickson, and this is Investigation 6 and 8 vocab combined. So get out your binder for science, and in the first page of your binder in the glossary, you're going to add, this is vocab for Investigation 6 and 8. First word is adaptation. Definition: any structure or behavior of an organism that increases its chances of surviving and reproducing. An adaptation, in other words, is something positive because it allows it to survive and reproduce. So the milkweed bug computer game that you played the other day showed you how much better a green not milkweed, but walking stick did better in the leaves and the bushes than in the wood chip pile. Birds could see the green in a brown wood chip pile, so that would not be a good adaptation in the wrong environment. So that's why walking sticks have three different colors: green, brown, and green, and they work depending on where they live. You have behavioral adaptations, and that strictly means their behavior allows them to adapt, and they learn certain behaviors through time. The things organisms do to survive is behavioral adaptation. For example, bird calls. You have different calls that birds make to alert other birds of danger, or for reproduction, or for food, or whatever. Same with migration. I have a picture here of penguins, and they have a behavioral adaptation. When it's storming, they all huddle together to try and keep warm, and then the outside circle slowly moves inward where it's warmer, and that's how they survive really bad storms. Structural adaptation is structure of the organism, so physical features, not behavior. So when we talk about structural adaptations, we're looking at something about the body of the organism. For example, birds, I think, are a good one. Here in the Midwest, we have lots of different kinds of birds, and if you look at them closely, you'll see they have different kinds of beaks. Their beak is a structural adaptation. Some beaks allow them to grab insects from the ground. Some beaks are really long, so they can go into long-throated flowers to get the nectar out of the flower. Some beaks are really short and wide and strong, so they can crack seeds. And then some beaks, and this one is able to crack seeds. And then some beaks are able to pick up like berries and things a lot easier. So, structural adaptations. Variation, definition: several traits for the same feature in a population. This gives biodiversity. This gives diversity in a population. So for example, a population of walking sticks, you have different color variations ranging from green to brown to green-brown. So their color is a variation. I have a picture here of different flowers. There's lots of variations you could look at here. You could look at petal shape. You could look at petal color. You could look at the size of the flower. Lots of different things, lots of different variations in flowers that you could compare. In insects, a variation of their mouth. There are 4 variations that we talked about in class, and you can see the differences in those. They're all mouth parts, but there's variations of them. Seeds, all different kinds of seeds. They're all seeds, but they all vary in size, color, shape, whatever. So that's what variation means. Natural selection. Definition is: nature selects the organism that has characteristics that can survive and reproduce in that environment, in that ecosystem. And so if you look at the word natural selection, it tells you the definition. Nature selects it. So look at it this way. If this brown walking stick that looks like a twig wasn't standing on a twig and it was standing on a leaf, the birds would see it and it would eat it. Nature selects it. Something's going to find it and eat it. and vice versa if the green one was on this brown stick. Nature's going to select it out, and something's going to eat it. So natural selection is when the organism's characteristics allow it to survive and reproduce. This is green because it stays on the leaves. This is brown because it's going to live on the twigs. A feature, any general structure, characteristic, or behavior of an organism. So you talk about a bird's wings, or you talk about an insect's legs or mouth parts. Those are features, and then their traits would be what kind of mouth part do they have, what kind of legs do they have, and so forth. So a trait is the specific expression of a feature in an individual. So when you talk about wings, their trait would be how long are their wings? When you talk about mouth parts, the feature mouth parts, their traits would be what kind of mouth parts do they have? Do they have chewing mouth parts? Do they have hypodermic needle mouth parts? Do they have sponge mouth parts? That would be the trait, the specific expression of a feature. Reproductive potential you did yesterday in class with the milkweed bugs, I think it was, yeah. And you calculated if there were absolutely no limiting factors, everything was perfect, what would their potential be? And that's what reproductive potential is. Unlimited growth of a population over time. Nothing stops it. There's no limiting factors. And of course, yesterday we looked at the milkweed bug, and it starts out kind of slow, but then as you found out, all of a sudden the population just takes off. And you have exponential growth. But of course, in nature we have limiting factors. So limiting factors are anything biotic or abiotic that act in some way to limit the number of individuals that survive and reproduce in a population. Now, biotic factors usually are who eats who. Or a biotic factor could be a bacterial infection that is killing off a population. Abiotic would be things like drought, lack of rain, or tornadoes, or floods, or volcanoes, or anything abiotic that can limit that population. Symbiosis. Within a ecosystem, you have relationships, interactions, and a symbiosis is interaction between species that can benefit one or both species. So between two different species, there's usually some sort of a interaction. We're going to study 3 types of symbiosis in the following slides. So in some ecosystems, there's mutualism. Definition is, it's an interaction between species where both species benefit. So I have a picture of a flower and a butterfly. Well, the butterfly is getting food, nectar, from the flower. And then it flies to another flower to get more food, and when it does that, it transports pollen from one flower to another. So you have pollination and fertilization of the flower. So both are benefiting. One's able to reproduce because of the butterfly, and the butterfly is getting food from the flower, and it doesn't hurt the flower at all. Commensalism is a symbiotic relationship. Definition is interaction between species where one benefits and the other is not harmed or helped. Nothing really happens to the other one. They're just there. So I showed a picture of some cows and birds. And what's happening here is the birds are benefiting. They're the species that's benefiting. But they're not hurting the cows at all. So how are the birds benefited? When the cows graze on the grass, they kind of move around insects, and then that allows the birds to find the insects a little bit easier. So the birds are benefiting by getting food, and the cows aren't harmed or helped either way. Commensalism. Parasitism. This is the nasty one. This is an interaction between species where one species benefits, but the other one is harmed. So for instance, I have a picture of a tick. We all know that ticks embed in our skin and suck our blood, and by doing that they can spread diseases. And one of those diseases that we can get from ticks is Lyme's disease. So that would be parasitism, where the tick is benefiting, getting food, but we, or our animals, our pets, are getting harmed because they could carry diseases and harm us. That's the end of this vocab. So make sure you get that into your binder and bring it to class tomorrow.